Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a topic that's close to the hearts of many Singaporeans. Why is it so hard to get married or have a big family in Singapore? We always hear about how Singapore has a declining birth rate and our government is encouraging Singaporeans to get married and have more children. But the reality on the ground paints a very different picture. Let's explore the challenges of getting married in Singapore and see if it's truly worth it. Let's get into it. First things first, housing. The cornerstone of any family, right? In Singapore, we have HDB flats, government-subsidized apartments meant to make housing affordable. Sounds good in theory, but the reality is these flats are getting so expensive that even with subsidies, couples are looking at massive loans that take decades to pay off. Think about it. You spend the best years of your life working to pay off a house, barely scraping by. Is that really the foundation you want for a family? Where's the room for enjoyment, for travel, for actually living life? And don't even get me started on the size of these flats. Sure, they're decent for a couple just starting out. But what about when you want kids? Suddenly you're crammed into a tiny space, everyone on top of each other. Is this really conducive to raising a happy, healthy family? Or are we just setting ourselves up for stress and frustration from the get-go? Okay, so you've somehow managed to buy an HDB. You're thinking about starting a family, but hold on, how are you going to get around? Public transportation with a baby? Possible, but not exactly ideal. So naturally, you think about buying a car. And that's where Singapore really hits you with a reality check. Cars here are ridiculously expensive. We're talking about certificate of entitlement on COE prices that can cost more than the car itself. Then there's insurance, road tax, parking. It all adds up. Suddenly that dream of driving your family around in a nice, spacious car turns into squeezing onto the MRT with a stroller and hoping for the best. Let's say you defy the odds. You've managed to buy an HDB, maybe even a car. You're doing okay financially. But then life throws you a curveball. Maybe you want to invest in property, diversify your portfolio, or simply downsize to save money. You decide to sell your condo and move into a HDB flat. Sounds like a smart financial move, right? Well, not so fast. Singapore has this rule where if you sell your condo and want to buy a resale HDB later, you have to wait 15 months. 15 months? What are you supposed to do in the meantime? Rent and risk being priced out of the HDB market? It's like Singapore is penalizing you for trying to be financially savvy. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the declining birth rate. The government keeps telling us to have more babies, that Singapore needs a larger workforce, but how can we even think about having more than 2 kids when the cost of living is so high? We've already established that housing, transportation, and even basic necessities are expensive. Now add education to the mix. Singapore's education system is known for being rigorous and, yes, expensive. From tuition to enrichment classes, parents are shelling out a small fortune just to give their kids a decent education. And don't even get me started on university fees. So tell me, how are we supposed to afford all this with more than 2 kids? It's simply not realistic for most Singaporeans. So we've talked about the financial challenges of getting married and having a family in Singapore. But here's the bigger question. If it's this hard, if it's this much of a struggle, is it even worth it? Is the piece of paper that says you're married worth all the financial stress and sacrifices? Is it worth putting your dreams on hold, delaying travel plans, and working yourself to the bone just to make ends meet? These are questions that every Singaporean couple has to grapple with, and honestly, there's no easy answer. Let's say you're one of the lucky ones. You've managed to navigate the HDB maze, you're financially secure, and you're even considering buying a second property as an investment. Seems like a smart move, right? Well, think again. Singapore has this rule where each Singaporean can only own 1 property at a time. So if you want to buy a second property, you'll be slapped with hefty taxes and fees. It's like the government is saying, you've made it in life. Now it's time to share the wealth. But here's the thing, we work hard for our money. We deserve the opportunity to invest it wisely and secure our future. Given all these restrictions and challenges, more and more Singaporeans are choosing to stay single. And honestly, can you blame them? Think about it. If you're single, you can buy your own HDB flat, invest in property, and build your own financial security. You don't have to worry about supporting a family or making sacrifices for your spouse. You're free to pursue your own dreams and goals. It's a radical thought, but maybe, just maybe, staying single is the more practical and financially sound option in Singapore. Let's compare Singapore's parental leave policies to other developed countries. In many European countries, parents get months, even years of paid leave to bond with their newborns. But in Singapore, we get a few months, if we're lucky, and even then, it's a constant juggle between work and family. We're forced to choose between our careers and our children. How are we supposed to raise a family if we can't even afford to take time off to care for them? It's a question that keeps many Singaporeans up at night. The government talks a big game about supporting families, but when it comes down to it, the subsidies and support systems are just not enough. We get a small baby bonus, some tax rebates, but that barely scratches the surface. The cost of childcare, education and healthcare far outweighs any financial assistance we receive. It's like we're being penalized for having children. Other countries offer free or subsidized childcare, universal healthcare, and generous parental leave policies. Why can't Singapore do the same? The challenges of getting married and raising a family in Singapore are just a microcosm of a larger issue, the rising cost of living and the widening gap between the rich and the poor. It's becoming increasingly difficult for ordinary Singaporeans to make ends meet, let alone achieve the Singapore dream of owning a home and providing a good life for their families. We're constantly told to work harder, be more productive, but it often feels like we're running on a treadmill, going nowhere fast. The system feels rigged against us. So what's the solution? It's a complex issue with no easy answers. But one thing is clear, something needs to change. We need affordable housing, accessible childcare, and a more supportive environment for families. We need a system that works for everyone, not just the privileged few. Remember, every challenge is an opportunity in disguise. Stay strong and keep pushing forward.